What makes you a better candidate than Tom Layton?
Well, I believe I have a record over my 12 years in public life that reflect the common sense values that raised me, and have a record of accomplishment in terms of creating jobs. We just a few weeks ago created jobs here in the city of Wilkes-Barre with Federal Review Services, 96 new jobs with an average wage of $67,000, significant jobs. There were folks who are saying, well, what, you represent 15 communities, the southern part of it, why are you helping create jobs in Wilkes-Barre? I want, and I believe I've tried to carry myself over the last 12 years as a regional leader. I know folks from Plymouth and Nanticoke are going to have jobs in that building. They'll have opportunity to have jobs in that building. They don't necessarily have to live in the city of Wilkes-Barre. We got to break down those parochial boundaries, these political boundaries that become walls instead of windows of opportunity. So I believe I'm a better candidate because on the critical issues that the voters are talking to me about on their front porches, at their kitchen tables. How are you going to create jobs? What's your record on job creation? We've created thousands of jobs in northeastern Pennsylvania, in Hanover Industrial Park, in Crestwood Industrial Park, in the Hanover Crossings Business Park, in communities. What did you do on taxes? Well, Governor Rendell came to the city of Nanticoke, signed the legislation creating first ever property tax relief in the history of Pennsylvania. We need to do more, and there's a lot more work to be done, but that was $1 billion relief, and he did it at the table of Nellie Hughes, a widow in Nanticoke, who, as a result of not only the gaming, the introduction of casinos to Pennsylvania, we also expanded the property tax and rent rebate for seniors, which means now over 100,000 seniors this year will have their property taxes completely eliminated. Completely eliminated. So that burden on a fixed income of worrying about, am I going to have enough money to pay my property tax bill, because the taxes continue to go up in the school districts, and we've just been through a painful reassessment. 100,000, 40% of them in Luzerne County will have their property tax. So on the issue of jobs, taxes, we have a tremendous record. On the issue of schools, I just heard this morning on NPR where they're cutting in some states education funding by $1 billion. I mean, we fought for $1.5 billion in new dollars for education and accountable dollars. It was a Republican idea, and I supported it. It was a great idea. Accountability block grants. We'll give you the dollars, but you got to be accountable for performance, and it's got to get to the kids in the classroom. So on that score, we have a better record than my opponent. In terms of safe neighborhoods, we have a better record than my opponent. Millions of dollars that we've brought back for, whether it's our firefighters, our volunteer firefighters, our police. We have in this year's budget 100 new troopers that we're going to put on the street, putting police officers on the street to keep our neighborhoods safe. And we were successful in bringing the Regional Public Safety Institute to Luzerne County Community College. It had its first anniversary, close to 900 emergency service professionals and volunteers trained at that facility over the last year. A great deal of our corporations in northeastern Pennsylvania had their people trained at that facility. Being successful in having a record of accomplishment on the things that matter most is what's going to separate me from my opponent. And of course, on the issue of accountability, voting no on the pay raise and not taking, voting no on the pension and not taking it, never taking a state car, honoring the pledges that I made when I ran for the first time. It's easy as you get into a decade of service to say, well, that was promises made many years ago, and times have changed. I've tried to keep the promises and always remember the values of the people that sent me to Harrisburg, and always stand with them.
Questions from the group right
now? The budget gap that we have now in the state. What are some of your thoughts on that, as far as where you see how we can, obviously fill that gap, and then not just for this year, but going forward? I mean, we continue to spend an inordinate amount of money on prisons and so forth, and not as much on education, but obviously the biggest thing is making sure we don't have the same issue we had last year where we don't have a budget.
Right.
So what are some of your thoughts on that?
The budget situation has been was difficult last year. It's going to be difficult this year. It is going to be beyond difficult in 2011, 12, 13. Two things are happening at the same time. The federal stimulus dollars are dropping off. The $2.5 billion will be dropping off the table in those out years. And that pension vote that I made in 2001, when my colleagues were pressuring me and saying that it would never cost the tax dollars a dime, well, a dime has turned into $5 billion. There's a $5 billion bill that's staring us in the face in terms of that pension crisis for both the PSERS and the SERS, the state employees and the teachers' pension fund. We have to address that issue. That has to be a #1 priority of the governor and the legislature. We cannot hand that bill over to the property owners of northeastern Pennsylvania or Pennsylvania. That bill cannot be forwarded. It will cripple our school districts. They do not have the ability to deal with the pension spike. We just met with superintendents and school board members with the Pennsylvania School Board Association, and to a person said, listen, we have to get a solution, and that's gonna come with, and it's similar to the budgets. We got to find legitimate and responsible sources of new revenue, and we're going to have to make some cuts, and we've made some cuts in the last 2 budget cycles. We've reduced the size of the state workforce by thousands of people through attrition and through other means. So I think we got to continue the belt tightening, but we also have to look. We're going to have to look at the Marcellus Shale. We're going to have to look at that as a potential source of revenue, and whether there is a natural gas tax and how we do that. There are several states. Most of the gas producing states have a tax higher than what's being proposed by Pennsylvania, Texas, Oklahoma, West Virginia. All those states have some. I think we've been responsible in how we've done it. We've reached out to the industry. There's a great potential for economic growth in that industry, but we also have to be responsible on 2 fronts. One, we shouldn't shift the burden of paying the bills simply to the property tax and to the homeowners. And 2, we've been through this before, where we've had a remarkable find of natural resources, and we didn't handle that situation very well in the anthracite years. We didn't make sure that there would be remediation if there was environmental damage. We have to make sure that that's in place as we go through this natural gas find, which I believe is terrific. I mean, it really has an opportunity to make Pennsylvania an energy giant again. We just have to do it in the most professional and responsible way that we can. And you know, I think we have to, and part of my drive on the Constitutional Convention, you have to look at modernizing Pennsylvania's tax system. You know, we rely so heavily, particularly on our schools and our local governments, on property tax system based on an agrarian society. We're no longer an agrarian society; we're a consumer society. So we have to modernize our tax structure to create fairness into where people have the ability to pay, rather than the property tax system where it is not based on one's ability to pay. And so I think on those 2 issues we can start to close the budget gap, being more responsible in how we spend money in Harrisburg. Again, you get back to the issue of that $200 million surplus. There's no reason for a $200 million surplus in a legislative fund. That's not responsible fiscal stewardship. There are other pots of money that we can do. So my first response is, we get in, we be responsible for the dollars, and then we find responsible revenue sources to fund the services that people deserve and need.